What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up. I'm Bob Wankel alongside Anthony Sanfilippo. And obviously, Anthony, we have not talked in, I guess, about a week or so. Some things happened at the end of last week that kind of tied me up a little bit on Friday and over the weekend. We are going to be talking about a much different Phillies team, one that has a different look, a different energy, a different vibe about it, and a different manager. So quite a bit has happened here over the last week, and obviously the Phillies sort of revived their season, what looked like a dying season over the weekend with a sweep of the Angels. And so there is a lot to unpack this morning, so let's bring you in and jump right into it. Give me just your overall thought about the last 4 days or about the last week or so and where you're at this morning.
You know, I watched a team over the weekend, Bob, that managed by a former World Series champion manager who couldn't figure out what the hell to do with his pitching staff and watched him lose a few games. And it wasn't the Phillies. It was Joe Madden and the Angels, because I felt like he had a lot of Joe Girardi moments in that weekend. Look, here's what I'm going to say. At first, I was surprised that the move was made when it was made. I know there had been so much discussion, but we had talked about this last week. I didn't think it was happening now. I kind of felt like there was still more time before it would happen. So I was a little bit surprised that it happened now. I guess the way things kind of imploded against the Giants, at least those first two losses against the Giants. I know he won his last game, but those first two losses probably was the tipping point. Even though Dombrowski didn't say that, he did mention how tough the losses were. Right, and so I think that the losses to the Mets and the losses to the Giants, as tough as they were, real tough losses. I think when he says that, I think that those were that collection was the tipping point. For
yeah.
him.
So they had.
So I think that said, that just real quick. The last thing I want to say, though, tied into that, is the only thing that seems to have changed is what you mentioned, the vibe, and I'm not necessarily certain that it's just player vibe as much as it was fan vibe, and that's okay, because if the fans needed as much of a boost as the team did, then that's good too, right? So to me, the lineup stayed the same. They're still going to the same relievers in the same spots. Like nothing really changed in these 3 games that Rob Thomson managed that Girardi would have done different. I don't think there was anything that he would have done differently per se. And yet the Phillies came out and looked great. So what's the call there? So that's why I think that's what I like to break down with you.
Yeah, and so there's a lot to do here in this episode. They're obviously coming off of a great weekend, and there have not been many great weekends for this team, not just this season, but really over the last 10 years, the last 11 years. I mean, if we're being honest, I think a lot of the frustrations that fans feel in 2022, it's a carryover effect of what's been happening, and all these playoff misses in recent years and not being competitive going back 7-8 years ago. And I think it's just all sort of compounded on itself. But now here you are, and you have this great win, a great weekend. And so for that reason, I definitely want to try to keep it a little bit more up-tempo, a little bit more positive. But I think it's hard to talk about the good that you saw this weekend without focusing on some of the bad that you saw, especially at the beginning of that Giants series. And you said it. I mean, listen, I went down there Friday for the press conference, listened to Dave Dombrowski talk, and I think that this was something that was sort of on his radar probably as early as the beginning of May. And I think it was a thing where they felt like, we're not going to do this. Like, this is sort of, it's just over, it's reactionary. We know where we have issues. Eventually this team will find its level. It'll be okay. And it didn't happen. And not only did it not happen, it kind of continued to trend in the wrong direction. And so it's one thing when you're kind of hovering around 500 and you're just trying to find your footing and you're a little bit inconsistent offensively. You're still trying to find your way with what you have in the bullpen. Okay. But then when you blink and you go 2-5 on that road trip in Atlanta and New York, and you come out and have just two of the absolute most embarrassing clown show type losses you could possibly imagine against Gabe Kapler, no less, in your home stadium in a must-win, like we need to save the season this week type of scenario, I think that at some point, you kind of get pushed over the edge. And if Dave Dombrowski really woke up on Tuesday morning, let's say, and said, we might have to do this, then he goes to the park on Tuesday night and watches 4 hours and 52 minutes of just horrible baseball, a total train wreck. Yeah, I think by Wednesday, no matter what happens, independent of outcome, you go for your jog, like he said, and he's thinking, I know how this ends. I don't know where we're going to be if we make a move, but I know where we're going to be if we don't. And I think that that's where they got to, and that's why they did it. So I have to tell you, I mean, we've been having this conversation. Everybody's been having this conversation for a week or two. I thought it was time. I, like you, was a little bit surprised about the timing of it. I thought that maybe one more bad series, maybe being 10 games under 500 after this weekend, they would maybe consider it. But good for them for getting out in front of it and saying, okay, we've got to go right now. We have a bad Angels team coming in. Before we go on the road against a tough series or for a tough series with the Brewers, we've got to have this jolt now. And I think that that's why they did it.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't knock them, right? I mean, they so far so good, right? It's like I said. I mean, you're going to look at it, and I know everybody's going to go get excited now and be like, oh, see, this is all that they needed, and now everything's going to be fine. And maybe so. I mean, look, Bob, one of the interesting quotes that I thought that Dombrowski said in his press conference was, he's around the team every day. And he just wanted a different feel in the locker room, right? So maybe and a different relationship with the players, and it makes me wonder, well, what was that clubhouse like with Girardi? Like that's the one thing that we always assumed that he had a pretty good clubhouse, that he was more, he was a good players manager kind of thing. I mean, that was kind of the assumption. We never heard anything negative really come out from the Phillies clubhouse. So my question is, though, were the players and the manager on the same page? And if they weren't, then this is the right, obviously 100% the right move to make. But if they were, I found it kind of curious that he would say what he said. So I think there might have been something there, a little bit of a disconnect even between manager and players. And that also went into the decision. And if that's the case, then good on Dombrowski for recognizing it and fixing it when he needed to.
Yeah, my assessment of this situation, and I'll try to be brief with this, is that it wasn't a toxic culture, right? Like, I don't think that the players hated Joe Girardi. There was a mutiny forming, and I think that's why you didn't hear leaks, and that's why you didn't hear anything really bad. It was more almost like, and this is probably fitting, but it sort of kind of mimics the way they play, but almost indifference. Like, all right, we respect Joe. He was a good manager. He's had a nice track record with the Yankees. He's a baseball guy and a good guy. But are we getting up for him? Or, does he have our backs the way that we want? Is some of the communication as good as you'd want it to be? And that was one of the things I kind of caught. Obviously, the Phillies aren't going to sit there and dunk on Joe Girardi during that press conference, but if you listen closely, when they highlight Rob Thomson's strengths in a certain way, you can kind of take it and say, well, obviously, this is also a reflection of who they previously had in there. So when you hear about willing to really talk to the players and figure out their mindset and be a great communicator, to me, that leads you to believe, it kind of goes back to the Doug Peterson, Chip Kelly thing, right? Like, about having emotional intelligence. It kind of lets you know that maybe Joe was out a little bit more on an island. And the other thing that's interesting about it, everyone wants to kind of link Rob Thomson to Joe Girardi, and that makes sense. They were in two different stops together. They're good friends. They like each other. But you can be friends with somebody, really good friends with somebody, and two different things can be in play and can be true. And I think both have a big impact. One, you have the ability to kind of sit back as a second or third in command and see the way that your guy does things. And you can like that guy and you can be his friend and have his best interests at heart. But you kind of have the ability to sit back and say, well, he handled the situation that way. I have the ability to also kind of take inventory of the reaction to those maneuvers and how he handles things. And you can say to yourself, like, they didn't like that. And if I ever had an opportunity, I'd probably do this differently. And I think for years, Rob Thomson probably had the ability to do that. Like, Joe's really good at this, but man, he's not so good at this. And if I ever get a crack at it, I'm going to make sure I don't do these same things. And I think that you're seeing a little bit of that there. I think that that's one real big part of it. And then the other big part of it is I think that, just my understanding of this, I'm not like reporting anything here, but my understanding of this is that Joe was out a little bit more on an island, that we talked about collaborative processes and things like that, but I think that Joe was a little bit more reluctant to buy into outside input from even his own staff. That's just my sense. And so I think the idea is that Rob Thomson comes in, it's more of a unifying force, it's a fresh voice. I think that the players are going to respond to it a little bit differently. And that is not to say that they're about to rattle off 111 straight wins here. Like, the Phillies still have deep flaws, and I do actually think we should get to those, but I do think we should make ourselves at least wait 25 minutes to talk about them. So this is not a cure-all, and I think we all understand that, but there was just because it wasn't a train wreck and that it wasn't a toxic culture doesn't mean it was a good one, and I think that that's what you can kind of take away from this.
Yeah, and then in that case, then this is certainly the right call. Because you want to make sure that you have everybody. You can't win anything in sports without a buy-in, right? Everybody's got to be bought into the same thing together. If you want to win a division, if you want to earn a playoff spot, there has to be. I mean, I'm not just talking about championships. I'm talking about being able to compete for that championship. You have to have a buy-in. And if the buy-in isn't there, and it wasn't there, and I think that's what you're trying to convey here, then you have to make a change. And you got to give. I mean, obviously, you give the coach an opportunity to make, or the manager in this case, an opportunity to change it himself. And I guess Dombrowski felt like he gave Joe that opportunity, and it didn't work. And so then, therefore, you've got to move on. So therefore, that makes this the right call.
And I have to say, I guess it should go without saying, I think sometimes you look at performance and the way that things unfold, and you're like, this guy's got to go. We talk about people in the realm of sports like they're just utterly disposable, and that like their lives aren't impacted by these moves, and they are. And so, from a human standpoint, like again, Joe Girardi's not a bad guy. I don't think he's a bad baseball guy. Like, I think that he has a place in the game. If he wanted to manage again, does he get a third crack at it? I don't know. But could he be on a staff if he wanted to be? Absolutely. If he wants to go into broadcasting, I think he's pretty good at that. But I do feel like it was time for them to make this move. I do. And I know that in our conversations, you could sense that. Doesn't mean I'm right. Doesn't mean it's going to work. But I just felt like, okay, we've seen 2+ seasons of this, and I was against firing him after 10 games or even 20 games. I think that's unfair. But when you have the expectations that this team had surrounding it, the money that's involved, and despite the deficiencies, there's talent here. He certainly wasn't getting the most out of whatever it is he had, and I do think it was time to make a move. And I'm not in the position here where I want to like commend the Phillies, but from an organizational high-level standpoint, I have to say, as a fan, you can be frustrated as hell that this team has been so unsuccessful over the last decade. And you can fault ownership and John Middleton and some of their hiring processes, the people that they've brought in to make baseball decisions. And we still, the jury's still out on Dave Dombrowski even. But at this point, I think you can reasonably say, all right, they're doing everything within reason here now to make it work. Like, their methodology to building the roster is flawed. It's not a perfect team. But they're trying, they're spending. You fire your manager 50 games into the season. Like, that shows aggressiveness. That shows a desire to say, we got to get there. And so they're trying like hell. And I've been very critical of the Phillies, you know this, for 3-4 years, both on this show and in print. But I would concede that they should be applauded for the way that they're handling their business right now. I really believe that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Bob. I mean, this is something that, I don't know that the previous regime does. I think the previous regime probably lets it fester longer. And maybe not even till the end of the season, for that matter, right? They might let it go that long. So, and we've seen this from Dombrowski before at different levels of the organization where he's come in and gotten
upside down, gutted it.
Got rid of people and brought new people in. And, maybe the fans don't recognize that so much because it doesn't necessarily translate to what's on the field, right? What they're watching every night. And so it doesn't really register. But the fact of the matter is the guy sees what needs to be done and he does it.
Right.
And so, again, like you said, jury's still out because there's no guarantee that any moves that he makes ultimately work. But again, kudos to them for, and to, I guess him first and foremost, but his whole team. I mean, he did say he talked to Sam Fold and Preston Mattingly and I guess Ned Rice, right? I mean, he did say he talked to Ned too. Kudos to them for recognizing what needs to be fixed and trying to fix it.
And he also said that he didn't talk to the players and that he didn't talk to the coaching staff. And I don't know if that's true, but I know that Dave Dombrowski didn't just wake up, go for a run on Thursday morning, and get home and say, yeah, I'm going to fire the manager. There's definitely some thinking and some thought that went into it. And we'll see, we'll see. And so one thing that you said, and I guess we can kind of move past Joe at this point and talk about what we saw more so this weekend. The lineups weren't all that different. Well, there's two things that actually did kind of jump out to me early on. And listen, the Phillies come out and they win the first two games by a 17-2 score. They're hitting, they're pitching. It looks great. Yeah. Is it all that different than anything that Joe would have done? Probably not. But I do think it's interesting that you saw Mickey Moniak get starts in both Friday and Saturday's game. And Rob Thomson talked about it afterwards. Having youthful energy and fresh faces is good. That's great, but so is production. And so we all know that, you can change up a few names and maybe play the young kids, but they also have to play well. But Bryce Harper had some pretty, I would say, strong comments after the game. And they were basically along the lines of, and I don't need to kind of directly quote them, but the gist was basically, you have to let them play, and you see that you have a young guy like Bryson Stott go out, and lo and behold, because you've given him some opportunities here to kind of get his footing, he actually produced. And to me, that was sort of telling. Was there a frustration internally amongst maybe some of the staff members and some of the players? Hey, we have these young guys here, but we're not really letting them rip. We're really not, letting them fight through the things that they need to fight through. But at the same time, I can't totally kill Joe Girardi for that because, urgency, right? The need to win now. And, Bryson Stott was hitting 113 10 days ago. So it's convenient. It's kind of, fun to be oh, look, he got to play for 5 games, and now all of a sudden he's 6 for his last 18 with 3 extra base hits, and look at him go. But, was this just, the perfect confluence of events that just made for a great weekend? Or, is it really as simple as, we're letting the young kids rip, and look, here we are?
Yeah, no, I think it's the confluence of events, Bob, and in a lot of ways. I mean, because let's also consider, would Bryson Stott have been getting as many opportunities if Segura doesn't get hurt, and then if Camargo doesn't get hurt, right? I mean, he's obviously going to probably play some second base now, and indeed he's going to be your shortstop. So do those opportunities arise? The Mickey Moniak thing. I'm a little perplexed and a little frustrated by it, in all honesty. I know people want to see him play. I don't particularly want to see him play. I think that it's kind of I hate to say this.
I know what you're going to say here.
People are going to say, how dare you say anything's unfair to Odubel? But for God's sake, they're going to play a platoon with 2 left-handed outfielders and tell Odubel, you have to be the platoon that faces the left-handed pitching because Moniak can't hit it. And that's, if you want to let him rip, let him rip. He's got to play every day. The fact that you're going to platoon him because he can't hit left-handed pitching, and then you're going to put a left-hander in his place, I don't necessarily know if that's ideal, right? So, and Moniak's still hitting, 100 or 111, whatever the hell he's hitting.
He's so far he is 2 for 13 this season with 7 strikeouts. So he's hitting 154 with a 368 OPS. Again, it's 4 games, so whatever. But yeah,
yeah. We can give him. You want to give him another week or so? Fine, but
so
it's not
I think that. One of these,
so I think it's
these guys is not like the other. Nick Maton actually had a functional season for this team last year and can play a little bit. Bryson Stott's a legitimate top 100 prospect who just got off to a slow start, but has a little bit of an edge. You kind of feel this guy can play a little bit. He's still feeling his way along.
Correct.
But there's something here with Mickey Moniak. Maybe I'm okay with giving him an opportunity. We've talked about before. He earned it in spring training. He put himself back on the map, was phenomenal. He deserved to make the opening day roster. He gets hurt. That's unfortunate, and does a nice job in his rehab assignments, and deserves a look up here. But this idea that, like, yo, we've got to play Mickey Moniak 5-6 days a week because he's that guy. Like, maybe he is. And, like, I just don't want to, like, close the book on a guy and say, like, oh, come on. Because it is so early. And you got to let him get his feet. And, like, there's something to be said for that. I mean, Mickey Moniak's not 29 years old. It's not like this is his 5th season in the majors and we absolutely definitively know that he can't hack it. But when you watch him play, you kind of see the hole in the swing. You kind of get the sense that, like, maybe this is just a little bit too much for this guy. So, yeah, I think that one of these things is not like the other when you talk about bringing up the youth and letting guys play.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%, and that's the thing. And you know, again, Stott. I think he took advantage. You know, I forgot to mention even Maton getting hurt. I mean, that happens before Camargo gets hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he took advantage of an opportunity to play that he was given, whereas so far Moniak hasn't. Now, again, Moniak's played 4 games. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that there is a legitimate ball player that is obvious in Bryson Stott. He doesn't cower from the he thrives in the pressure spots. We're seeing this. Like we're seeing him come up and get an opportunity in these big spots in games, and he's delivered. Even when he got a single, I forget what game it was, where he came up with 2 outs and kept a rally going. And the Phillies it was one of the games where the Phillies tied it. Maybe they lost. I forget which one of those games in there against either San Francisco or I think it was San Francisco. One of the San Francisco games where he got a hit to extend the inning. He's coming up in these late game spots and saying, "Yep, I'm ready for this. I want this role."
It's easy to say because if he has a hitless game yesterday, strikes out to end the game, we probably aren't saying this, but you kind of just watch guys, and I think if you watch enough baseball and you're around it, and like I'll flex a little bit and be like, if you coach it, and like you kind of know if a guy's struggling, and you say better days are ahead, and then you kind of know when a guy might just not really have it. And that's sort of my sense when I look at these 2 players right now. I will say this. It's interesting, and I wrote about this morning. I ended up writing 1,600 words. I rewrote the story 14 different times because of all the twists and turns at the top. But I talked a little bit about the Phillies really kind of needing a right-handed bench bat. And
they certainly
ideally it would be one that could also play center field. Because what you have now with Moniak, and if you want to give him continued playing time for now, because you want to just see, that's cool. I have no issue with that for now. But if there comes a time where you say, like, this guy can't hack it, the Moniak-Herrera tandem is an imperfect one. It's just less than ideal. Now, listen, I'm going to give Odubel Herrera credit here and forget looking at the overall numbers, but like you just said, they're basically, if the idea is let Moniak rip against righties and stick Herrera against lefties, that's kind of unfair to Herrera. I don't know that unfair is the right word, but it's certainly not ideal for the player, and it's not ideal for the team. But in Herrera's defense here, like, we're 15 games in now, he's played against lefties. He's had 22 at-bats, 26 plate appearances. He's hitting .364 with a .940 OPS against lefties. And, like, I, too, don't want Odubel Herrera to be the Phillies' everyday center fielder. And, like, I wish that they had a young prospect with significant upside that they could play every day. And, like, let's turn the page. And I'm with all of that. But given the situation, like, I'm going to reiterate something I've been saying here and you've been saying now for 2 months, which is, like, you could do a lot worse. And the guy has actually done a very good job. Like, he went 0 for 2 his first 2 at-bats yesterday, then works a late walk, comes up, gets a hit. Like, it's easy to be like, dude, LOL, like, he swung and missed at a pitch behind himself. And, like, he does these stupid things, and, like, you want to kill the guy. But, like, the production is the production. And, like, I don't get the sense his teammates hate him as much as fans hate him.
I don't think so at all. I think the teammates actually kind of like the guy a little bit. And I saw, there was something I caught on video, actually, yesterday, watching the game. And I don't know if you saw it, Bob. I mean, obviously you were down. Were you down there yesterday?
I was,
Yes. So I don't know if you saw this. But in the bottom of the 8th inning, we got Odubel at third, and there was the ground ball.
Yeah.
And and he doesn't come home. Doesn't go, right? And it looks like Dusty, I think, held him. Mm-hmm. And the camera pans to them for a few seconds, and you see them having a conversation. And Dusty's explaining why he held him. And Odubel asks, well, in this situation, and Dusty's like, yes, now that it's one out, obviously you would go because we don't. So, I mean, you could see that maybe he's trying to figure it out. I mean, I don't know.
Wait a minute. Okay.
Maybe so. I mean, there was a lot of communication and a lot of agreement between the two of them.
Shouldn't you know that? Like, as a freshman in high school, like, I feel like that's a conversation I'm explaining to a 15-year-old.
Bob, yes, I agree 100%. We shouldn't be teaching fundamentals at the major league level, but at the same time, if in fact that's the case, and the guy is trying to improve his base running gaffes, you gotta give him credit for it, right? He's having a legit conversation about when it's the right time to go, when it's not the right time to go, with his third base coach in a crucial moment in a game. And it turns out it was the right thing to do. Obviously, they get the grand slam and they tie the game. What happens if he goes there? Is there a play at the plate and he's thrown out? And that changes the whole dynamic of the inning, right? I mean, so there's sometimes you want to, and look, he deserves to be criticized when he has his gaffes. But
it was smart.
I want to give the guy,
but
I want to give the guy credit sometimes for trying to understand.
Yeah, after he played his first game with the Phillies in 2015. So yeah, after 7 years, he finally decided to ask the third base coach, like, why didn't I go there? Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm with you in theory of that. He has been a very valuable player to this team this year, and if he were not on this roster, they would be in a lot of trouble, like a lot more than they've been in. But all right, I think that for the sake of the fans listening to this, I think the 5 minutes of Odubel Herrera after the best win of the season probably is more than they want to hear, and that's my fault. I did it because it's me. Like, I believe that he deserves to play every day, even though I don't want him to. Like, I mean, just from a baseball standpoint, like, yeah, I do. So we'll see how things play out with Moniak and Herrera. But then I guess let's talk. There's so many different things that we could talk about with this weekend. I'm almost like, hey, you know what? Let's just start Friday night, and we don't have to spend too much time, I guess, on the first two games, because I think that Sunday's game's obviously the game. But man, I tweeted out, and I didn't work Friday night. I was off. I went down and I covered the press conference, did a little story, and I came home. And I was actually out with a few friends at dinner, and we were having some drinks, and I tweeted out, Zach Eflin is one of the city's most underrated athletes. And I was like, kind of like, damn, that's a bold take. And then I really started thinking about it, and I'm like, man, like, actually, like, that's true. I mean, he's had a couple rocky starts, specifically against the Mets, twice up in New York in May. And you take those starts out, which you can't do, and I get that you got to paint the whole picture. But even with those starts, I just see a lot in him. And I don't see him as a number 2 or a number 3 on a playoff team, but I think he's a damn good 4 on a playoff team. And on this team, he's their 5, or maybe interchangeable with Kyle Gibson. So I don't know, man. Like, are you with me on that? Like, I really, really just think that he's a damn solid player.
I like him a lot. I really do. I think that there's a lot there. And yes, he's had his moments. Like you said, he's had a couple of bad starts. But and yeah, you're facing a team that on Friday night. And I was down there, by the way. I went looking for you, and you weren't there. I was kind of surprised because I knew you were at the press conference. I was like, "Where the hell did Bob go?"
Friday was an off day. Friday was you got to be kidding me. They're doing this today? That's what Friday was.
There's a lot that we like, and if you go back and listen over the course of the off and on 3 years that we've been doing this pod, or 3.5 now. That there's been a lot of times where we've talked about Zach Eflin, and both you and I have felt like, yeah, this guy's ready to take that next step and be, a top 3 guy in a rotation. And he had the injuries, and then he had the whole thing where he was fighting with the pitching coach when Gabe was the manager. He didn't want to throw up in the zone. He wanted to keep throwing down in the zone. And then after he just said, screw it, I'm going to do my own thing, he started pitching well again. Right now, his numbers are the best numbers of his career.
Yeah, he's. I'll tell you where he's really making some strides, and teams are hitting worse against him. I mean, he's really done a better job limiting hits. But I mean, 51 innings pitched this year. He's walked 10 guys. I mean, that's how you end up with a 1.14 WHIP. So you look at it. He's made, I believe, 9 starts this season. I would say 6 have been very good. Lately, I would say if you go back to the end of April. Yeah, I mean, just real quick, 6 innings, 1 run against the Rockies. The Mets, he gets beat up, 4 1/3. That was the Sunday night game, 5 earned runs. He was really bad. Then he goes on the COVID IL, but he comes back right off of that, 6 innings, 1 earned. Against the Dodgers, 7 innings, 2 earned. Gets beat up by the Mets again. Then he comes out to the Angels, 8 innings. I mean, 5 hits, no earned runs. So like I said, obviously he has the stumbles against the Mets, but more often than not, he's giving you not just, the 6-3. He's not just giving you the quality start, but he's giving you above average starts, and that's the difference. So,
and the funny thing was, I want to talk just real quick about the game Friday night. He gives up 5 hits. I'm sitting there, and I took both my boys down, and Anthony Jr. says to me, this should be a 1-hitter. And it should be the only guy leadoff hitter. And we went through the hits, and I was like, you know what, you're right. He gives off the leadoff single, line drive single to left field. The rest of the hits were all beating shifts. Like they were balls that, in normal situations, or with a decent defensive team, would have been easy plays. Like they would have been outs, simple outs, a ground ball outs. So like that was really kind of the thing. I was like, you know what, you're right. Like there were 4 hits that the Angels had that were not, should not have been clean hits. They should have been outs. So even further, the point of how well he pitched on Friday night was that. I mean, he was that good.
Yeah, I mean he's been phenomenal. And you start to look at, like, if you go deeper into the numbers, and this kind of plays off of exactly what you were just talking about, but this season, this actually includes the bullpen. The Phillies are number 5 in baseball in terms of limiting hard hits. So, like, right now the Dodgers have the best hard hit percentage as a staff, 32.1%. The Phillies are at 36.4%. That's pretty good overall. If you break it down to take just the starters, Phillies are actually the best in baseball at limiting hard contact against opponents. And you go, all right, well, what the hell does that really mean? Well, I know sometimes we look at these like StatCast numbers or these Fangraphs numbers and we go, come on, just, what's the ERA, what's the batting average, what's the result? But, I mean, you can look at this from a logical perspective and say if you're holding opponents to weak contact, generally speaking, good results are going to follow. And so you look at the performance of this rotation overall this year, what you're getting is an elite season from Zach Wheeler. You're getting a pretty good season from Aaron Nola. I'll credit Ranger Suarez to the extent that he is not the same guy he was a year ago. His location has been really on and off. He's really fought it. But I think that's the best way to kind of sum up what you've seen from him. He's fought it. He hasn't completely imploded. So you're hoping that he can find it. But I do think that there's some red flags there with him. You hope he turns the corner. Gibson, really good for 3 innings yesterday, falls apart in the 4th, didn't get much help from his defense, which we can talk about later. But Eflin, to me, is the guy that's kind of tilted this rotation, despite some of the concerns there, is kind of stabilized this thing where you say, it's a pretty good rotation.
Well, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. It's become the strength of the team. And it was something I was, and I admit it, Bob, but we're going to go back to the beginning when we first started the season this year. I was like, I hope this rotation holds up. Like I was worried about, Wheeler throwing as much as he did last year, and then coming in, late, coming off of the injury in spring training, and I was worried about Nola being Nola, having those games where he's had good games, but then all of a sudden he gives up the long ball, or you start to wonder why he can't win big games. I thought that could be a problem. You wonder what Eflin you're going to get. Is Kyle Gibson the guy who pitched lights out for Texas the first half of last year, or is he the guy who started to leak oil towards the end of the year for the Phillies? And can Ranger match what he did last year? I was a little concerned that they would take a step back. Well, they haven't.
Right.
They haven't. As a group, they've been the strength of this team. And if they can stay on this pace, the Phillies are going to get back into the playoff race. It's very simple. If they pitch the way that they've pitched this year, they'll be there. They'll be in the ring. Whether they get there or not, I don't know. But they'll be in the conversation for sure.
Yeah, and so, so far right now in the National League, there are 43 starting pitchers that have thrown at least 50 innings. And I'm using 50 as the number because Eflin's thrown 51. And at the top of Fangraphs WAR, you have Zach Wheeler at 1.9. You have Zach Eflin, who's actually number 2 on the Phillies at 1.3. Actually, Aaron Nola is right behind him. So Eflin's 11th overall, Nola's 12th. And then you scroll down and you have Gibson at 14th. So they have 4 of the top 14 guys in WAR among National League starting pitchers that have thrown at least 50 innings. And that's where you say this rotation holds up a little bit. It goes a little bit more than ERA. Now, each of these guys, other than Wheeler, there's things that are annoying, a little bit concerning. You want to see a little bit more consistency. But there's been enough good there where I think you can kind of step back and say, yeah, I feel good about this. So, yeah. Saturday night, they come out, they grab an early lead. I thought Zach Wheeler was really good again. Just to be able to watch him pitch at the top of the zone and challenge hitters the way that he does with the fastball and beat them. It's awesome watching him pitch. I know that when we look at the Phillies over the last 20 years, we think about guys like Kurt Schilling and obviously Roy Halladay, Cliff Lee, Cole Hamels. I'm not sure, and I know, peak Halladay and some of the runs that Lee went on where, he put together 2 months and he had, a 1.1 ERA. I know that those guys are probably more dominant, maybe, for stretches. But when I watch Wheeler pitch, it's like masculine or something. It's just I'm coming at you. I'm coming at the top of the zone, and I'm going to just beat you. And, he can induce ground balls, and he can be efficient at times. But just watching him, finally use that fastball to miss bats. We talked about that. When the Phillies signed him, remember the conversation we had? the guy throws 97, 98 miles an hour. He doesn't strike anybody out. And now you're just watching him not that he's ripping off 12 Ks per 9, but he can beat you when he needs to. Yeah,
100%. He's been sensational.
Yeah.
He really has. I thought last year was going to be
the best of.
It was the best. Yeah, I thought that we were going to see that. Okay, and he's got to come back, right? He's got to fall back a little bit from there. Oh no,
no.
He's been as good, questionably maybe even better at times this year. He's untouchable sometimes.
You're talking about, just 57 and a third innings pitched, 10.5 Ks per 9, less than 2.5 walks per 9. The ERA is actually higher than what it should be. So you look at the expected ERA, it's actually 2.82 to his 3.14. The fielding independent 2.3. He's been awesome, and there's probably more to be had there when you look at some of the more traditional numbers. So you have to feel good about that. I thought it was a good win Saturday night in the sense that you had this electrifying performance on Friday night, new manager, new energy, all that stuff. And then it's easy for this team, and we've seen it so many times, to have the immediate letdown, which they didn't have, which then brings me to, unless there's anything else you want to talk about with Saturday's game.
No.
That brings me to Sunday. And if the Phillies would have lost yesterday 6-2, I think you could have stepped back and said, hey, listen, I know the Angels were on this massive losing streak, but it's still a good ball club. 2 out of 3, good series win, stabilizes things. But it's so Phillies to not just drop the hammer, get the sweep. They were 8 games under 500. 2 out of 3 is nice, but they've got to stack wins. They got to sweep some series to really make a move and get themselves back into this thing. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen. And so here's where we can start to bring in the negatives, because we know it's going to finish with a resounding positive. You get into that 4th inning, and, Kyle Gibson hits a little bit of a wall. He starts getting hit around, and it's on him. It's on him more than anybody. But compounding the issue is that you get a ground ball to Alec Boehm, who we know has been better at third base. Actually made a couple nice plays over the weekend as well. But he gets a two-hop bouncer, and he kind of backs up on it, and that's okay because he was sort of in between. But if you watched it in real time, you could see there was a hesitation, and he shoots his eyes to second base, thinking, ooh, do I have a play there? No, I don't. Now he pumps, puts the ball in the glove, and then goes across the diamond and safe. And that's a play that can't happen. You know, it's not a boot, it's not a poor throw, but it's that indecision, just that lack of feel for who are my runners, how was this ball hit, and that brief hesitation costs him. And all 5 runs in that inning were earned, but it was a play that extends the inning, gives a team an extra out. And, that's the type of play. The Phillies talked about it. Rob Thomson talked about it on Friday. They've got to make the routine play. We're not going to make the spectacular ones. We're limited, but we got to make the routine play. Jesus, that's a play that you have to freaking make.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt. There's no doubt defense is still killing them. I mean, it's funny you had mentioned, the pitchers, the stats for the pitchers, right? Like their ERA and expected ERA. Well, when your expected ERA is lower than your actual ERA, well, that's an indication that defense kind of stinks behind you. When your fielding independent pitching number is what it is, and you compare it to the way teams are hitting again. Look at here's another one. Look at batting average on balls in play for the starting pitchers. And then look at what it should be, what their actual batting average against is. I mean, it's unbelievable how bad the defense really, really is. There's games we don't see it because there's the errors aren't listed. There's no errors or. But we're not looking at range ratings and things like that.
I actually have this in front of me. I was able to just bring it up right as you were saying it. And so here you go. Among National League teams, so the Phillies have the 4th highest batting average in balls in play. So we talk about how the staff limits hard contact. They're outstanding at this. Overall, they have pretty good numbers, but they still have the 4th highest batting average of balls in play at 306. Colorado, Washington, San Francisco are the 3 teams ahead of them. So, I mean, they are I don't want to oversimplify it, but what that tells you is that they are unlucky. They're not getting the results that you would expect given the contact that they're inducing.
Well, the pitchers are unlucky.
Yes. Yeah, oh, yes.
The team isn't unlucky.
The team's getting exactly what it deserves. And so then along those same lines, later in the inning, Rhys Hoskins, ground ball to first base. He spins, goes to second. It's the right read if he can make the throw, but he can't. It's high. I believe it was Camargo that was on the bag. I'm not totally sure. Maybe it was Stott.
Yes. It was Camargo.
It was Camargo on the bag, and he gets pulled up. And again, so they gave the Angels 5 outs in that inning. And no, it doesn't show up as an unearned run, but these are plays that have to be made. And even after I kind of wish we didn't have it flow just like this, but even after the Bryce Harper grand slam, you come out and Corey Knebel, who we talked about in our last show, and is it time to move on from him as closer? And in any other normal year, we would be having this conversation. Well, we might get to actually have this conversation now because just absolutely unacceptable in the 9th inning. Just unacceptable. You get the moment of the season, and I know there have been a few, the Harper home run in Atlanta, and they've blown these games. This was the moment. This was the signature Bryce Harper moment in a Phillies uniform. You can argue 2019 against the Cubs, the walk-off grand slam. I'm telling you, the fans, the moment, the feeling in the stadium, this was the moment. And he comes out and he walks Kurt Suzuki? Come on, dude.
Yep.
And this a week after you looking everybody in the eye and saying, I've been really good, actually. Give me a break. And Rhys Hoskins, it's not an error, but it's a ball that an average to above average defensive first baseman, he makes that play. So Corey Knebel, give me a break. Rhys Hoskins, dude, everyone loves you. You're a good guy. I like you. I listened to you on the telecast Saturday night when you were mic'd up at first base. You were funny. We know that you have some upside in your bat, but come on, man. Yeah. And that's my problem. It's all good with the Phillies, but it's not all good.
Right, no. I mean, again, that's 6 times in a month that Knebel collapsed or had a situation where they needed him to have a shutdown inning and he just didn't have it. 6 times in a month. And he's had 12 appearances in that same span. So he's 50-50 when you bring him in. 50-50. Is that what you want out of your closer?
No, not to be the guy, not at 10 mil. And nope. I think he's a guy, I'm just going to say this. I think he's a guy that in that locker room, he's like, Philly, huh? You know, I just think he's a guy that's adjusting to his surroundings a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll say that. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, so the way I look at it now is when you really think about it, the Dodgers don't make a lot of bad moves, right? Obviously, they win the division every year, right? I mean, yeah, they spend more money than anyone, but they knew they were losing Kenley Jansen in free agency, who was their closer for forever. Did they make an effort to keep Corey Knebel?
Maybe a modest one.
But, I don't know. Who knows, right?
Yeah, that was an early signing for the Phillies too. So I mean, it wasn't like, hey, let's keep in touch and we'll figure it out. I mean, they obviously didn't want him that badly.
Correct.
I don't know. I mean, this is a guy that has a good track record. Coming off of a pretty good season. He was obviously good for the Brewers a couple years back, but he's got to be better. I mean, listen. The Phillies can solve things offensively. It looks like they may have after a weekend in which they scored, 17 plus 9, 26 runs in 3 games. You start to look like going into at some point during the Giants series, the Phillies had fallen to like 13th in OPS, and now they're back top 10, top I think 7 in runs per game. OPS is like 7 or 8, slugging's like top 6. Like the numbers are looking really good after this weekend, but they've got to figure it out at the back end. And if they don't want to do it with Sir Anthony Dominguez because they want to use him in the high leverage spots and wrap around innings 7th, 8th, okay. But like if Knebel's going to be this bad, they're going to the situation's going to force their hand.
I was going to save it for one last thing, Bob.
Well,
I wanted to point. Well, I will. We'll get back to this.
All right.
I got something. I got one last thing that could be a solution for the Phillies in the back end of the bullpen.
So it's going to take us 47 and a half minutes to kind of arrive at the moment that everybody's talking about, or the 2 moments that everybody's talking about. But I'll tell you, I was there yesterday covering the game, and up comes Bryce Harper, and I'm thinking to myself, this game's over. I've long had in my story, hey, good weekend here, but God, Phillies, like, make the plays. JT Realmuto come through in that 3rd inning. They were 0 for 8 after Rhys Hoskins struck out in the 8th inning with runners in scoring position. And had they stranded the 3 that Harper ultimately brought in, they would have stranded 13 runners on base. So a handful of bad plays coupled with all these missed opportunities, and you're like, that's the Phillies. Like, and yes, Rob Thomson might have a new energy here, but this is the Phillies. Bryce Harper changes all of that. He obviously comes to the plate, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, damn, it's pretty loud here. And there was a good crowd yesterday. And it got loud. He works the count to 3-2. It gets very loud. And I was telling you this before we recorded. I looked up, and I kind of just panned the stadium, and I looked out to left field. And there were a few rows actually out in the left field bleachers. I don't know if they just brought them themselves or what, but I start to see these like white rally towels whipping around, and I'm like, damn. I'm like, haven't seen that in a while, like other than maybe like an opening day or something. And before you could blink, here comes the pitch, and Harper goes just off on it. And it was one of those moments like you talk about if a team does get somewhere, and plenty of teams don't. The Phillies haven't in recent years. But if a team gets somewhere at the end, you say, that was the game. That was the moment. Like, you have to have those moments. And we talked a couple weeks ago about the Phillies wasting the best of Bryce Harper and not giving him the opportunity to have these moments in October. Well, yesterday, they did just enough and had a couple good enough at-bats to give him a shot at a moment. And God damn, did he deliver. I mean, just an unbelievable swing, an unbelievable moment for that team, and it was awesome.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm stunned at the pitch. I mean, here's Joe. When I joked about Joe Madden at the beginning of the pod today, but Joe Maddon's a guy who intentionally walked Corey Seager with the bases loaded earlier this year because he didn't want to face him. Now, I'm not certain that he wanted to intentionally walk Bryce Harper with the bases loaded here. Although, if you've done it with Corey Seager, you could justify doing it with Bryce Harper, I guess. But when you gets out ahead of him 1-2, and then they want him to chase a couple pitches. He doesn't. He lays off. Okay, he works. He fouls one off. When you're at 3-2, why are you challenging Bryce Harper with Castellanos on deck, who's not been great lately, and it would be a righty-righty matchup? Like, why? And not only are you not challenging him, first pitch of the at-bat was a changeup. If you recall, Harper tried to swing, swung for the fences. First pitch, he was trying to get that fastball to put it out. He was out in front of it. It was a changeup. It's a good pitch, right? But when you throw that changeup first pitch, isn't that likely a pitch you're going to come back to when you're looking to strike the guy out at the end?
Yeah.
3-2. I mean, usually a 3-2 pitch is going to be the same pitch that you get 0-0. And a lot of time, a lot of at-bats. So you're going to go back to that changeup again, and you know he's a smart hitter. Not only that, he's actually tried to throw it 2-2, and Harper fouled it off. So 3 times went to that changeup in the same spot, and this one just was a little bit higher, and he puts it out of the park. Great work, great professional at bat by Harper. I'm not trying to take anything away from Harper, but what the hell are you thinking? Yeah. Especially when you look at Iglesias's career numbers against Harper.
And Harper's had success, yeah.
Has had great success against them. So I don't understand it at all. I really just don't. I think it was poor management, poor pitch selection. It was one of those things where a week ago that was the Phillies, and we're sitting here bitching and complaining about Knievel doing that, right? I mean, that's exactly what it was. But yes, you're right. What a moment! What a great moment. I mean, I got excited. I was sitting in my house and just watching the game, and they were down 6. We were down. I'm like, I got to go over and go do some work. And I was sitting on the computer, and you get a couple of guys on. I'm like, all right, you go back over, watch it, check it out, see what's going on. And Harper comes up, and I'm like, man, this would be something if he did this.
Yeah.
And then you could get look, Schmidt's not the greatest broadcaster, but there are moments that he has where he has a sense for things, right? And he had a sense for it in the night. And I give him a lot of credit for yesterday, broadcasting that game. He had a sense that Harper was going to do what he did, and then he did it. And he also had a sense that Bryson Stott was going to come up with a hit. Now, he didn't think he was going to hit the home run, but he also had a sense in the 10th inning, or in the 9th inning, that Stott was going to come up, and it was a good matchup for him against that pitcher. And he's like, this is good. This is going to work for the Phillies. I can see him getting that single. And then he hits the home run. So, like, it's kind of that ball player's instinct, right, that you could – and it really kind of – I think it was good for fans watching it on TV. But, man, yeah, it was the win of the year, Bob. It was the win of the year, and it could be the one, like you said earlier in this pod, that turns this season around.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I totally with you on the calls. I mean, I thought Tom McCarthy did a good job. Kruk, going, yeah, baby, like as soon as the contact's made, Schmidt sets it up, McCarthy executes it. Obviously, Scott Fransky, and like one of the best things in Philadelphia sports is when the Phillies do have a big moment, Fransky gets to call it, and he crushes it, and you hear Larry Anderson in the background with like a laugh, like a ha-ha, like one of those. Yeah. And, I mean, you knew, like, I'm in the stadium. I wasn't listening to either broadcast. I was just there. But I knew right away, I was like, we got to get the calls. We got to pull them and put them up on the website because you knew that they were both going to be awesome. And I thought that both guys kind of rose to the occasion and made sure that they adequately captured the moment. So credit to them. Looking at Bryce Harper, just quickly here, I almost feel like we don't talk about Bryce Harper enough on this show. And he wins the MVP last year and hits 309 with a 1.044 OPS and 181 OPS plus. This guy was just awesome, right? And now this year, you look at it, and they're 1/3 of the way through the season now, and he's tracking 39 home runs, which would beat his 35 from a year ago. He's hitting 309 on the nose again. His slugging percentage is actually 13 points higher than it was a year ago, and his OPS is 997. It's actually a little bit less because he's not walking as much right now. And I think that there's two reasons for that. One, he's got a much better and much deeper lineup around him, so pitchers are going to have to naturally challenge him a little bit more, even with the struggles of guys like Nick Castellanos sitting behind him. And the other thing is he's swinging at the first pitch far more. Now, I know that some people have speculated, and actually I was on Joe Giglio's show on, I'm going to say Thursday night, last Thursday? Yeah. And Joe had said, I'm sure you've noticed that he's swinging at the first pitch more. I said, yep. And he said, do you think that there's anything to that about, hey, does it hurt when he swings and misses? And maybe he's just trying to get to the end line a little bit quicker in his at-bats. What do you think about that? I know that's more speculatory, and I think that Joe asked it at the time, especially because, he had missed the game before and they had sat him with the forearm tightness. Well,
let's put it this way, Bob. It's no secret, right? In baseball, the pitch that you have the best chance of getting a hit, best batting average, best on base, best slugging, everything is 0-0, correct?
Yep.
It just in general. I mean, not anybody, not Harper specifically, any player. So I think Harper now realizes that, like you said, because he's finally getting some pitches to hit because of the guys that they have around him. He's trying to take advantage of it. I think it's that simple.
So
I think it's very. I think it's as basic gets. That teams realize, do we really want to pitch around this guy and then run the risk of Castellanos, who, maybe he's not putting up the same numbers as he did last year, but is still a dangerous hitter, putting another base runner on with him coming up. I mean, it's a pick your poison kind of thing. And Harper's just, he's like, I'm going to go first pitch. Let's go.
Yeah, he has more home runs on the first pitch this season than he does in, any other count or any other pitch number of an at-bat. So far, he's had 38 plate appearances end on the first pitch this year. He's 15 for 36. He's hitting .417 with a 1.056 slugging percentage and a 1.477 OPS on the first pitch this season. He's also done considerable damage, though it's only in 10 plate appearances on 1-0 counts. He's been really good in 1-1 counts as well, hitting 500, 3-1 counts, hitting .667. So, I mean, he's obviously been good and follows the trend of what you'd expect deep in counts when you have the advantage. He's been really good as well. But you see the volume. You see the volume of at bats just ending on the first pitch, and he's been awesome.
Yeah, but not just that. And you pointed out earlier, he's on pace for 39 home runs, which would be the second most in his career, besides the 42 he hit in his first MVP year in 2015 in Washington. He's on pace right now, and this is no joke, for 57 doubles.
Yeah.
Think about that number.
Yeah.
That's close to a Major League record. I think the Major League record is 61 or 62, something along those lines. He's on pace for 57 doubles.
Yeah.
And 39 home runs.
He's almost pushing 100 extra base hits at this rate.
And he leads the majors in extra base hits at this point, right? And yeah, you're right. He would be. I think he's on pace for exactly 100. Yesterday was one third of the season. That locked up 33% of the season.
Yeah, here you go. Most doubles in a season is Earl Webb, actually, in, I don't know what year he did it, 1931. So
there you go.
Just real quick, just to put this in context, because I actually want to explain if he ends up with 57 doubles, like what that would really mean. Just listen to this real quick. Earl Webb, 67 doubles in 1931. George Burns in 26. Joe Medwick in 36 at 64. Greenberg in 34. Paul Wagner in 32. Like the top 5-6 guys in doubles are like all from the 1920s and 1930s. When
that's all you did was hit doubles because the fences were so far away, right?
Right. And so like you have to go to Todd Helton in 2000 when he hit 59 doubles for like a modern era doubles leader, and then actually funny enough,
and where did he play?
Castellanos hit 58 in 2019, so
And where did Helton play?
And Helton played in Coors Field. And so Nick Castellanos is really the king of doubles, if you want to be honest.
of the modern day, right?
In 2019, 58 doubles. So how about that? So Bryce Harper's coming for you, Castellanos.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, seriously, if with 1/3 of the season, he's on pace for 57 doubles, 39 home runs, and 3 triples, which would get you 100 extra base hits.
Yeah, it's just a special season. You look back at guys that play in the city, and you talk about Schmidt and Dr. J and the guys that they were a little bit early for me, but this may be sustained. Being the key word. Allen Iverson obviously is a Hall of Fame player, but I don't know. A little bit more of a flash in the pan, honestly. I actually really look at Iverson's career, and there's not as much longevity as you'd hope. He may be the guy in the last 30 years. He's
the best player. He's the best Philly since Schmidt.
Yeah.
That's no disrespect to the Rollins, Utley, Howard trio, and those guys were fantastic, and they had sustained success too, but they weren't doing what he did.
And it just goes back to what we talked about. Those guys won a championship. Those guys played in a lot of important games. They produced in those games, and that's what separates them. But when you look at the numbers and the statistics, that's where you hope for Bryce Harper that there is an opportunity because, man. How about, real quick, before we get to one last thing here, Mike Trout this weekend?
Yeah. 0 for 27, I think he is now. It's his worst stretch of his career.
0 for the weekend?
Yeah. Let's be fair. I think he was robbed of at least 3 hits in the weekend. Maton's play that he hurt himself on that blue pit that should have been a hit, dives and makes the catch. Odubel playing left field on Friday night, filling in for Schwarber late, dove and robbed Trout of a hit. And then Stott made a hell of a play yesterday in the hole and threw out Trout at first base. That was a surefire single as well. So, yes, he did. He went 0 for the weekend. He is 0 for 27, longest stretch of his career without a hit. But at the same time, he was a little bit snake bit.
You know how Russ tweets out because he thirsts for likes on Twitter so hard. He'll do Mike Trout's overrated or he stinks or he's a coward. I don't have that take really, but I will say I don't care about Mike Trout, and I don't know if it's because I'm miserable or if I'm just become this grizzled baseball guy. But I'm a South Jersey guy, South Jersey baseball coach. He is the guy,
Mm-hmm.
And all the writers, all the high school writers, they come to see him, and great. I get it. I just don't care. I don't care. I live 45 minutes away from Millville. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care that he plays for the Angels. I don't root against him. He's a great player, and when he's on TV, I might stop to watch it if it's convenient for me. But he does nothing for me, one way or the other. When he's at the Eagles games, I'm not oh, there's Trouty, he's an Eagles fan, go Birds. I don't care. I actually think it's kind of weird that he gets footballs from the players and stuff. I just don't care. It doesn't register at all for me at all. I didn't feel like I was watching greatness this weekend. I just didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not trying to be takey here. I just whatever.
In all honesty, the reason we went Friday is the boys wanted to see Trout.
Yeah, and so did probably 30% of the people that were down there this weekend. A lot of Trout jerseys and all that, and I don't know, it just doesn't do anything for me. And it does for other people, and that's awesome. He's a great player. He's arguably the best player in the game. I'm not trying to take anything away from him at all. I just don't care. I was more interested in seeing Ohtani, who's not having a very good season play. At least
I'm not an Ohtani fan.
Yeah, I just wanted, I just thought it was cool to see it. First time I've seen him play
for sure.
But
for sure,
not a great weekend, not really having a great season.
No, do you think? Obviously, they got off to a great start this year. They've now lost 11 in a row. They're now under 500 after starting the season 27-17.
Yeah, he's going to get fired. He's going to get fired.
Well, no, Madden, I agree. But do you think Trout at some point decides enough's enough and he decides to opt out of that contract?
I don't know. I think that people were having this conversation about Bryce Harper 5 days ago. They're both very similar. I was actually talking to somebody earlier today about both Trout and Harper, and there are these great players who've put up great numbers and they're future Hall of Famers, and they have had no playoff success. Trout's only been there once, I believe. I gotta say, I do wonder, like, long-term, like, if the Phillies couldn't figure it out, I think the Phillies will continue to spend, and I know that the Angels are big spenders as well. But I do wonder, like, if at some point either one of these guys were to say, this isn't working, let's change it up. Trout is on the Ken Griffey track. You know, maybe 3 different playoff appearances. I think Griffey made the playoffs in, like, 95 and 97 with the Mariners, and then once later in his career he was in the postseason. Griffey had, like, the moment, though, in that 95 series against the Yankees. Like, there was a moment, at least. Trout hasn't had any of that. And so, yeah, to your point, like, I wonder if there's a day where it gets there. Maybe not 2023, but does one day he say, like, yeah, I need a change of scenery. It would have been cool if he came back here. Like, my God, like, could you imagine? But the amount of pressure and the expectations and spotlight on him would have been just unbelievable.
Yeah, I wonder what his deal is out, and you know, because we're not out there with with the Angels. I mean, I know that he has a no trade clause. I know there's no opt. When I say would he opt out, he doesn't
force a trade.
He doesn't actually have an opt out clause in the contract. That doesn't mean that he can't force his hand and get himself traded somewhere. I guess the question is, does he have the same kind of situation in L.A. that Harper has here, where Harper kind of serves as like an assistant GM in a lot of ways.
Yes.
With the Phillies, right? So like Harper is asked his opinion and like he kind of weighs in on things. Does Trout have that kind of cachet out in Anaheim? And if he doesn't, does that mean is that something that makes him want to say, okay, I want to go somewhere else and chase this?
Well, when you signed a 12-year, $426 million contract with a $20 million signing bonus, you have to wonder. I mean, you would think he has some say because he's there through 2030 at $35 million a year. So, but yeah, to your point, I do wonder. Like, he'll be 31 next year, 32 in 2024. I would think that would be the breaking point. He gets to 32, 33 years old. He's got maybe 2 or 3 more pretty good years left after that because you assume that those last 3 years, he's 38 in the final year of his deal.
Yeah, he's Pujols at that point.
Yeah,
right?
He's got like 3 to 4 more really, really, really good years here before he becomes pretty good. I do wonder if in the next 2 years he says, like, we got to pull the plug, we got to do something different. And if the Angels aren't getting where they want to go, then would they be open to it? Because you wonder, you say, okay, like we want to win too, and you're a great player, but this formula isn't working. So
right,
yeah, something to keep an eye on. All right, what do you got on the one last thing front?
So one last thing. Usually I don't do Phillies. We've had this conversation before. Usually I try, every once in a blue moon I throw something at you that though is Philly related for one last thing. And I kind of was just kind of looking around. Their minor league system is so bereft of talent. I mean, at the upper levels, obviously. We know that some of the young kids that they have down in Single A, they're really excited about. And, a couple of years down the road, maybe they'll eventually be something. But I came across a name yesterday, and I completely forgot that he came back to baseball last year after retiring in 2017. And then came back last year, and I completely forgot because he was so miserable last year, I guess, when you go back and look at his numbers with both Reading and Lehigh Valley. But have you noticed what Mark Capel's doing with Lehigh Valley now?
Yeah, Alex Coffey of the Inquirer wrote a feature about his resurgence. He's been really good.
As a closer for the first time in his career. Yeah. Only has 3 saves so far, but 22 innings, and his WHIP is 1.03. His strikeout rate isn't quite there. I mean, it's like if you're thinking major leagues, you want a higher strikeout rate because you want somebody who throws the ball really hard and strikes guys out, and misses a lot of bats. But could that be a guy, Bob, as we move forward here, and you're wondering, not to say to come in and be the closer, but maybe be a guy and say, you know what? We finally found a role for this guy after all the ups and downs. Former number 1 overall pick in the draft. Had his struggles both with the Astros and here. Retired. Now is trying to attempt to come back at age 30 or 29, whatever he is, 29 or 30. Is that a guy you say, let's see if it plays in the late innings in the major leagues?
Probably worth a look when you consider the lack of depth that this bullpen has, at the front end of it especially. He's an older guy. It's not like you're forcing a young kid into a weird situation. You think about his struggles, and are his struggles indicative of just simply not being able to elevate his game at higher levels? Or does he or has he learned from those struggles? And he's not trying to be a cash in on the projections of a first round pick, of a top pick, from being that guy that he was at Stanford. I mean, I remember watching him pitch at Stanford, back, I think his 2013, I want to say, was his senior year there, or before he came out, I should say. And he was unbelievable at Stanford. I mean, the career that he put together there was just phenomenal. And you go back to like 2014, he comes out and he's a consensus top 20 prospect across the game. I mean, I actually have it in front of me here now looking at this. I mean, Jonathan Mayo from MLB.com had him number 17 overall. Baseball America had him number 39. Baseball Prospectus number 21. He failed, and he failed miserably to the point where he was out of the game. It was over. He retired. So now he comes back, and there's something here, and I would love to see him get a crack at it. I don't know what he will be, but does he deserve an opportunity if he can keep this up down there? Yeah, hell yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, it's
a great story if he does.
It would be a great story if he did. It would be better than Daniel Bard in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because I think the thing of it is that you look at it. And, first of all, he was drafted 3 times, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
is that correct?
He went back in, yeah, and
Detroit. And then and then Pittsburgh, and then whatever happened there, he never signed with the Pirates, and then the Astros took him first overall the 3rd time.
Yeah.
And then, but he, for all this time, since 2013, it's always been, well, he's going to be a top end of the rotation starter. And he was starter. And then he retired because he couldn't get it together. And then after 4 years, he comes back last year. Like I said, I completely forgot that he came back last year. And he was still a starter. And then it was like, okay, this guy can't start. And really just kind of like made him like a long reliever kind of thing. And that was it. And then this year, he's still back again. So they must see something there. Like, I mean, if you're willing to have a guy be in the minor leagues for 7 years, right? I mean, there must be something that you still see there. And now all of a sudden you say, okay, we're going to turn you into a closer and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, it's like
he gets to see 20 Kratz of 20. Yeah, I mean, 22 innings, while is a small sample size in a relief role, it's not that small. No. That's my point. Yeah. It's not that small of a sample. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, I wonder, if he gives you another, 10, 15 innings like this, and you get to the All-Star break, and you're looking at your bullpen and say, we need to fix something in there. We need another arm in there. I think it's something that might be worth considering.
I agree, and that is such a nice way to end things. But because we are who we are, I want to just say one thing that I forgot here. I have it in my notes, and I want to bring it up.
Go ahead.
Yohan Camargo gets hurt.
Oh, yeah.
And exits the game late yesterday.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this. I forgot about this too.
And I said, damn. I said, I know they don't have a lot of middle infield depth to bring up. And I admittedly am not like a minor league hawk. I'm not like the guy that's checking the box scores across the system every night. So I just said, what would be a really good story? What if Scott Kingery came back up? I wonder what Scott's doing this year. I was like, he's probably. I know.
I looked this up
because we haven't heard anything. I'm like, I know it's not good. I was like, but let me just see how bad it is. And I'm like, maybe he's hitting 230, and they just say, hey, listen, we know that you've played up here before. You can at least catch the ball if it's hit to you, whatever. And then you open up MILB, right, the site, and you look at the numbers, and you see 54 at bats, and you see 10 hits, and you see that he's hitting 185, and you see that he has 3 extra base hits, and you just you hit the X on the browser, and you go, never mind. And,
yeah, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Dude, Roman Quinn, he clears waivers and the Phillies outright him to Lehigh, and Roman Quinn just accepts free agency, and you go, all right, that's the end of Roman Quinn. We'll never see him in a Phillies uniform again, and that's okay. Nice guy. It just never was going to work out. Scott Kingery, man. Let's see you.
Well, I mean, yeah, but he's not. I mean, he's not on the 40 man, so they're just paying him his money.
Just paying him his money. They already owe him the money. I get it. So you might as well have him be employed. But
yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean it's pretty much it. I mean that's what they're looking at and they're saying, yeah, we just might as well have him employed because
I'd say, Scott, you know what? You're from Arizona, buddy. Why don't you go catch on with an affiliate out there and maybe a change of scenery will help you. We like you. It's not going to work.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know that there's one player. I really don't know if there's one player that I can remember, at least with the Phillies. There's probably been a few Eagles that I've talked myself into over the years. But I just don't know if there's one Philly I can ever remember being more disappointed by than Scott Kingery.
Yeah.
And I believe he signed one more year after this year.
One more year
after
this year.
Ends out in 2023. Yeah. I mean, $6 million. $6 million. He's making what Brad Hand's making right now. For oh my God.
Well, you know what? It's a problem.
Options through 26. Do you think they'll pick up the options?
Yeah, I know, right? There's an option that year. There's an issue here because if Camargo has to miss time, they don't have another utility player on the 40-man, nor do they have one playing in the minor leagues that's not on the 40-man. That's that you say, oh, we can just add into the 40-man and call him up. They don't even have that guy.
Right.
Like that's how bad things are with the depth still.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything out there like free agent wise. Like I got to be honest with you. Somebody asked me the other day for a comp on Bryson Stott, and I just said there are things I'm really good at. There are things I'm really not good at. Like giving you comps on players, like not my thing. And knowing the current like scrap heap free agency like shape up, like I have no idea. So
yeah, I don't know. I think they really might have to trade for somebody here, Bob.
Yeah. If
Camargo is hurt, they're going to have to trade for somebody because the only position players currently on the 40-man that are in the minor leagues, you got Donnie Sands, the other catcher guy, Matt Vierling, and then you have 5 pitchers. Bailey Falter, Hans Kraus, Alvarado, Morales, Damon Jones, and that's who's a AAA. At AA, you got Muzziotti and Jalen Ortiz, and then a pitcher got James MacArthur.
Yeah,
and then you're not going to bring anybody up from single A. I mean, Luis Garcia is the guy who's a middle infielder, who's a prospecty type kid, but he's only playing single A ball right now. He's not. There's no way he goes from Jersey Shore to major leagues. That's the rest of your 40-man. That's it. There's no one else.
What's Ronald Torreyes doing these days?
Did he sign somewhere?
I don't know. I actually don't think he did. I could be wrong though.
So, I mean, that would call the Braves and give us back Phil Gosselin.
Yeah.
He's playing in their minor league system right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure, but maybe that's the answer. I have no idea.
Whatever it is, they had better be right-handed.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, well, that will do it for the latest episode of Crossed Up. Phillies in Milwaukee, and actually I wanted to talk about, hey, how important it is for the Phillies to survive Milwaukee and then take advantage of a soft spot in their schedule after that. But we ran out of time.
Hey, you know what, though? If they go 2-3, or 2-1, if they win the series, right? If they go 2-1, win 2 out of 3, that will be the end of that 32-game stretch we talked about a month ago of how tough the schedule was.
Yeah.
If they win 2 out of 3, they finish 500, 16-16.
In that run, yeah.
In that 32-game stretch.
Yeah, my goal for them is to see them reach the 500 mark by the end of this month. And in order to do it, there's 23 games left. They would have to go 14-9. That would actually put them 1 game over at the close of June. And so, 2 out of 3 against the Brewers would be great. Now, Milwaukee's lost 5 out of their last 6 games. They got roughed up by the Padres a little bit this weekend. And, the Phillies they have some decent pitching matchups where they could conceivably compete in these games. That being said, the Phillies don't win on the road. They're coming off a horrible road trip last time out. And, the Brewers are 15-8 at home. So 2 out of 3 would be huge for this team. But they better take advantage of Arizona at home next weekend, the Marlins, 5 against the Nationals, 2 against the Rangers. They owe that team. Now's the time. So it's go time now.
Yeah, it is go time. It is go time. And these matchups, the one that favors them the most is Wednesday. They get Nola Hauser. I mean, that's Adrian Hauser. He stinks.
Yeah.
And Suarez, like you said, has been a struggle, but it's not like the Brewers are throwing it. They're throwing Jason Alexander on the other side.
You are a noted Brewers doubter, so
well, I don't like their lineup.
Yeah.
I think if you go up against good pitching, and you saw what happened with the Padres, right? Padres have some good pitchers.
Yeah.
They don't hit.
Yeah.
So I like their rotation, but then Woodruff's hurt. And so then you take Woodruff out of the equation. You got Corbin, Burns, and a good bullpen.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they'll win games with that, but they ain't winning a championship with it. You can't hit.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm with you.
Yes, I'm not a Brewers fan.
Not a Brewers.
I think I like the Cardinals in that division better anyway.
All right. Well, guess what? We will be back to talk to you after that Brewers series. So if nothing else, the Phillies are fun for the moment. They've given some people some optimism. We didn't have to sit here and trash them for 80 minutes, so we'll see what this week brings. Phillies are back in the game. We will talk to you guys later this week. Make sure that you check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere that you listen to your podcast. Leave us a 5-star review if you happen to do it on Apple. That always helps us out, and we will talk to you soon.